Hi, I'm Sylvester, and I have voices in my head. I hear and see and feel things that aren't real, and I have been experiencing this since 2019. In 2019, I started hearing voices, and rather than try to get help for it, I convinced myself that I was telepathic or that I was an MK Ultra government experiment. And at times I convinced myself of some pretty crazy things, but at the end of the day, I was just psychotic. And I still am psychotic, even though I'm on medication that makes the voices not entirely go away, but they are definitely a lot quieter and are gone most of the time, I would say. Sometimes I still hear them. Sometimes I still have psychotic breaks and I still engage with my delusions, even though I know I shouldn't. Um, and I'm currently working with my doctor to find the right amount of medicine and the right kinds of medication to make the psychosis. Maybe it will never go away entirely, but to make it at least manageable and something that I can live with. I thought I had schizophrenia, but I have not gotten a schizophrenia diagnosis or a schizoaffective disorder diagnosis, which is what I thought was probably the most likely thing. But that was me self diagnosing. I don't have schizophrenia and I don't have schizoaffective disorder. And it's psychosis not otherwise specified, I think is what they call it. It's just psychosis that is occurring alongside my use of cannabis. They think the cannabis caused it. Cannabis can cause psychosis or exacerbate psychosis and schizophrenia in at-risk individuals. So it is highly likely that these schizophrenia-like delusions were caused by the cannabis. Therefore, they're not calling it schizophrenia. I don't have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, but it is essentially like the thing I'm suffering with is essentially what you think of when you think of schizophrenia. Like I was hearing voices, I was seeing things, I was feeling things that I knew weren't real, but I was engaging with these things to a point where it became real. And like I said, I convinced myself I was telepathic, I convinced myself I was psychic, I convinced myself I was a government experiment, I convinced myself of a lot of things, and at times these delusions became very real to me. And most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, the voices and the people in my head were hurting me. They were not nice to me, generally speaking. However, there is that small sliver of amount of time, the small amount of time when they were sometimes nice to me, where the voices were sometimes my friend. And like I said, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, these schizophrenic like delusions were not, or schizophrenia like delusions were not good to me. They were not nice to me. They were not my friends. It was not enjoyable. But that small amount of time when they were nice to me, I miss it. And I think a part of it is kind of like Stockholm syndrome, where I lived with these delusions for so long that I became accustomed to it. And even though these voices were hurting me, it's still really difficult now that they are quiet because I became used to having them around. And even though most of the time I was aware of the fact that these were psychotic delusions and not real people, it still felt like I was less alone because I had these people in my brain, because I had these voices and these psychotic delusions. And going from having voices in your head 24/7 for years to suddenly having your brain be quiet has been really, really hard for me to adjust to. I feel incredibly lonely because, like I said, even though most of the time these voices were hurting me, there was still that feeling of I wasn't alone. No matter what I did, no matter where I went, I always had people in my brain, and that was oddly comforting. I never really felt like I was alone. And you might argue that it's better to be alone than to be tortured by voices in your own head, and I would agree with you on that. But like I said, it's still really, really hard to get used to the fact that I am now 100% alone. And like I said, the voices are still kind of there. I can still kind of hear them a little bit, but they are definitely like I have to really try to hear them. And maybe I'm just convincing myself that they're still there at this point because they are so quiet and I've lived so long with them that I'm just wanting them to still be there, if that makes any sense. But for the most part, my brain is pretty quiet right now, and it's incredibly lonely. I don't really have any friends or family, really, and the only person I really ever even text is my mom, which I love you, Mom, and thank you for sticking with me through all of this, but I am very lonely. And I'm also very scared of conversation and other people. It's funny because I sit here talking about how lonely I am, but people have made effort. People have tried to be my friend. People have tried to be in my life. People try to start conversations with me. But first of all, I'm a bad conversationalist. Secondly, I don't feel like I have anything to offer right now because I feel so incredibly broken. And third, like I even when I'm talking to somebody else, even when I'm around other people, I still feel alone because nobody really understands what I went through. Nobody really understands me. Nobody's really in the same boat as me that I talk to, generally speaking. So it's like I felt like more of a connection with the voices in my head than I do with real life people. And it's really yeah, it's difficult for me to put myself out there. And even if I just try to tell people, like, well, for the past 5 years, I've been hearing voices, that's usually not a great conversation starter. People are like, oh, like, what have you been up to? Well, for the past 5 years, I've been having schizophrenia like delusions, and I've been mostly just engaging with the voices in my head. They're like, okay, I don't know what to say to that, right? like, I don't know what to talk about when I'm talking to people in the real world because like everything that's been happening for the past 5 years of my life has just been basically stuff that's happening in my brain. And I also feel like my days are very empty because I spent so much of my time just talking with and arguing with the voices in my own head that now that they're gone, I don't know what to do with myself. I just have all this time where I'm just sitting here empty and alone, and I didn't realize how much of my day was spent just talking to my psychotic delusions. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm feeling alone. I'm feeling kind of disconnected from the world, and I'm feeling kind of I don't want to say bored because I'm not bored. I'm very fatigued and lethargic, and it is hard to get through a day. And I find it like I don't know how a normal person does anything because it takes like every ounce of my energy just to get out of bed and shower and like do basic human things. But I am like there's a lot of emptiness. There's a lot of emptiness in my brain that I don't know how to fill, and I don't know what to fill it with. And so, yeah, there's that. Anyway, I have to go. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Thank you for listening. Bye.